G'day, welcome to this video where I show you how to make a linear graph on Google Sheets. So here I've got some data where I took a bunch of containers that had a round base, like buckets and bottles and cups and things. And what I've done is I've measured the diameter of each container using a tape measure, and then I've measured the circumference of the same container at different positions. So here's a container that was 6 centimeters, 4 millimeters across. And then I wrap my tape measure around different parts of that container to measure how wide right around the outside. And I did that for 4 containers here. So I want to see how this matches up with this and find a relationship. Now, first thing you'll notice is that there's some text missing here. So I need to expand all these cells so I can see everything. So I'm going to select the whole sheet by clicking in this corner. I'm going to go Format, Text Wrapping, and Wrap. And that will make sure that every cell is expanded to show the text. That one's a little bit still small. I could just slide that over a little bit. That looks better. Now I'm not going to plot all these trials. I want to find the mean or the average. So in this column here, I'm going to type in mean circumference measured in meters and hit enter. And now in this little box, I'm going to show a formula to calculate the mean. I'm going to type in equals, which tells the spreadsheet I'm about to enter a formula. Type the word average. Now you can click average here to finish the word, or just type it yourself. Press Shift 9 to get an open bracket. Now highlight the cells that you want to average. Shift 0 to close the bracket, hit enter. And that has now averaged all of those numbers for me. So if I drag this little handle down, it will now average every row immediately for me. So those are the averages for all those trials. But I can see some problems here. First of all, come back to this first column. Some of these numbers have 3 numbers after the decimal, some have 2. And that's because the computer doesn't count any zeros that I type in. Now this measurement here, this fourth row was 0.080. So I'm going to click my rounding button to make sure that it shows me all the possible decimals that my tool could measure to. Now you could look at that now and know that the tool could measure to the 3rd decimal place. Same for all these measurements here. That one's got 1 decimal, that's got 2, that's got 3. They all need to show 3 decimals because that's how accurate my tool could go. So I've rounded those off, and just happily over here, this is now rounded as well to the same decimal place. If it didn't, you could play with the rounding button yourself to make sure this is no more accurate than the tool you used in the first place. Okay, so I've got my means. I want to plot this now on a graph against the container diameter. So click in an empty cell anywhere you like and hit the chart button, insert chart. If you can't see it, you might have to go insert chart on your computer. It gives you the same effect. It says no data. So here's what I'm going to do. Notice it's got a data column over here. It says x-axis and series. Now in the x-axis, I'm going to click the grid. I'm going to tell it what data. I'm going to say this is the data I want on the x-axis. That's the bottom row. Click OK. But I still need more data. I need the circumference. So I'm going to click Add Series over here, and I'm going to go Mean Circumference and click that in. Now that's still not the graph I want, so I'm going to change the column down here to a scatter. And right now it draws me some points, and I can see I'm getting a bit of a straight line. So my graph is well underway now. I can just ignore that data. Now from here, everything we do to fix up this graph is going to happen by double-clicking the graph, and I get this menu over here. I'm going to go into the Customize menu now, and I notice that on the bottom axis, on the X, it doesn't start at 0. So I'm going to go to the horizontal axis and say I want my minimum value to be 0, hit enter, and now it's extended my graph for me from 0 on both axes. Now I want it to draw the line for me, so collapse that little menu, go to Series, and you're going to add a trend line, and it should straight away by default be linear, which is what we want. Now that's pretty cool. It's lining up my points, but I also want to know what is the mathematical equation. So where it says label, I'm going to click Use Equation. Now this is really important up here. Let's just take a moment to look at that. You know that y equals mx plus c. Mx plus c in maths. So y is the variable on this axis, which was our diameter. M is the gradient. X is going to be the variable on this axis, which was this is the diameter, this is the circumference. So X is going to be the diameter, Y is going to be the circumference, and C is the y-intercept. Where does that line cut this axis? So check out this piece over here. 3.14 is m, my gradient. The asterisk means multiply. X is just the same as that X, plus, now I've got a negative 0.0105. That whole thing is my y-intercept, my C. So if I was going to rewrite this correctly, well, if I just check my data over here, mean circumference went up the side. So I'd need to say here, mean circumference, that's my y value, equals, now m is the gradient, and that's 3.14. X is the variable on the x-axis. So I'm going to put an asterisk for multiply, and this is the diameter. Now I've got a little y-intercept, so it's actually negative. I'm going to put negative 0.0105. And if I hit enter, this thing here is my completed mathematical equation. So that is the actual equation for that graph. Now Google Sheets won't know what your variables were. It'll give it to you in this format. The y is missing. It's got y equals, which is missing, and then you've got gradient m, x plus c. And you'll need to make sure you use the same format and rewrite it, because right now this is meaningless, doesn't mean a thing. Now let's go back to the graph and add some labels, because nobody right now would know what this graph was about. Double click the graph, go to Customize, and everything now is going to be in the Chart and Axis Titles drop down. First of all, let's do the horizontal axis. Now that was down here, that was the circumferences we measured. So I'm going to type in here circumference measured in meters with my bracket, hit enter, and that pops up on my graph. If I wanted to, I could change the font and the color and all that stuff right now. I can do that later too. What's my vertical axis label though? That was up on this y-axis. Well, this was going to be mean, in fact I've done that wrong, haven't I? This is mean circumference measured in meters. This one down the horizontal should be diameter. So I'm just going to fix that up. So you can see that making mistakes and fixing them is really simple with Google Sheets. It's just an instant button click, type it in. Needs a title, so double click. Let's go back to Customize, and for the title, it's a sentence about what we did. So I'm going to call this Comparing the Diameter with Circumference for Various Round-Based Containers. There we go. So already this graph has been done in just seconds. Now that would take you ages on paper, but look at all the detail. You know that diameter was measured on the bottom in meters. Circumference was calculated on the side in mean. It was a mean circumference. There were repeat trials. You've got a title. The computer's drawn a line. Now what you notice is this gradient's pretty special. So can you think of a number that links diameter and circumference when we talk about circles? Well, 3.14 is pretty special. It is the number pi. So our gradient here is the number pi, and it's connecting this round variable with this horizontal variable across that round distance. So that's how we do linear graphs. Remember, the main thing is that when you get that mathematical relationship, you've got to rewrite it for yourself in this format using variables that you've set up. All the best.